Well, folks, Valentine's Day is here again. A day of love, a day of romance, a day that's, definitely not just like dedicated to corporate greed that sends everyone home miserable because of missed expectations at the end of the night and usually ruins more relationships than it saves. Don't you fucking love it? And when I think about love, when I think about romance, I can't help but think about the WWE. I mean, think about some of the most iconic power couples in WWE history and their fairy tale love stories. You've got Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. You've got Edge and Lita. You got... Okay, honestly, maybe WWE isn't the best example when you look at romance. And for me, no couple got done dirtier by the ding-dang WWE than the team-up of Lana and Rusev. And today, we're gonna talk about that. Rusev and Lana, aka Miro and CJ Perry, for my All Elite fans in the audience, were a dominating force in the WWE, debuting back in 2014. Turns out the pairing of Lana's brains and Rusev's brawn made for an unstoppable monster, the latest foreign heel to decimate the WWE roster, and honestly, they had a very successful run initially, with Rusev remaining undefeated for several months, capturing the US Championship and managing to stand up to whatever obstacle stood in their way. But unfortunately, all great monsters must fall, and in the case of Alexander Rusev, he would fall to the young up-and-comer John Cena at WrestleMania 31, losing his United States Championship in the process and setting off a chain of events that would actually lead to me believing John Cena is genuinely the greatest professional wrestler of our generation. Eat shit, Okada. And after months of feuding with John Cena and pay-per-view loss after pay-per-view loss, Rusev found himself in a bit of a pickle. What happens to the monster after he's defeated? What happens to the dragon after he's slain? It's a unique problem you run into in the WWE because, unlike in traditional storytelling, when the villain is defeated, he doesn't die or get sent off to jail. He kind of just slinks away into the shadows, preparing for his next big plot. And in the case of Rusev, he knew something needed to change, because during his feud with John Cena, another interesting change started to happen within the fans themselves, because while they still had this hatred for the Bulgarian Brute in their heart and would boo him at every instance, they would begin to cheer for Lana. Because, as it turns out, if you put an extremely attractive blonde woman in front of a group of nerds, they will start screaming their heads off at every instance, which began to create a bit of jealousy within the heart of Rusev, beginning to resent Lana for taking attention away from him. So, after Lana throws in the white towel for Rusev during his I Quit match with John Cena, he finally has enough, confronts Lana in the center of the ring, and breaks things off in front of the entire world, prompting the Ravishing One to smack him across the face and run off distraught, which would lead to not a love triangle, as I believe Wikipedia described it, but no, instead, a love quadrilateral, a unique storyline happening in the world of professional wrestling, as Lana would run away from Rusev and directly into the arms of pro wrestling's most recent wanted man, Dolph Ziggler. Lana's newfound relationship with Ziggler only grows that black heart of jealousy that was growing inside of Rusev, prompting him to attempt to pull Lana back over to his side, only for him to unfortunately injure his foot during a match with the usually extremely safe worker known as the Ryback. So, unfortunately, Rusev was out of action. He couldn't do anything out in the ring, which honestly could have proven to be a godsend for the WWE in this moment. It was the perfect way to pull Rusev onto the shelf, give him some time to rehab his body, rehab his character, and return to the WWE a changed man, a reinvigorated monster ready to decimate Dolph Ziggler. And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of But Do You Think That's What They Fucking Did? If you guessed no, congratulations, you won a copy of our home game. No, instead, they had the man who literally tapped out John Cena earlier that year, hobbling around on crutches and getting cucked by the dude from the Spirit Squad. But of course, only 3 points can't make a love quadrilateral, which is why we need to introduce one more element into this storyline in the form of Summer Rae, the star of the Marine 4 moving target. Truly the mark of a superstar during this era. And Rusev decides to seduce Summer Rae the only way he knows how.
It's a fish.
Yep. He just gives her a fish. That's the whole thing. Just like gives her a weird, cold, dead fish in the center of the ring. And then he's like, oh, the fish is cold. I will name her after another cold fish, Lana. And then he gives like Summer Rae a dog. And I don't know what it is. He fucking roasts this dog. He fully like gets it. He's like, this dog is ugly. He's stupid. He's got shit. He's got no dick. Fuck this dog. I hate this dog so much. He roasts the dog and it is just like, and I will call it Dog Ziggler. This was the fucking peak of comedy for me in 2015. This was my shit. Literally, the only reason I made this video was to talk about the Dog Ziggler segment. And imagine my surprise when I go to YouTube and it's only 3 minutes. It's like 3 minutes of Rusev with a dead fish and just roasting the shit out of the dog. And to pay for the penance of getting to talk about Dog Ziggler, I unfortunately have to talk about literally everything else involved in this storyline. So I honestly don't know if that's a price worth paying, to be honest with you. So at some point, Rusev attacks Dolph, revealing that his broken foot had been healed and he was prepared to return to action, at which point all of us at home were so excited because hell yeah, Rusev is back in action, the storyline is back on track, now they can firmly move forward into the final arc of this storyline. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of But Do You Think That's What They Fucking Did? I'll be your host today. No, they immediately have Rusev not just beat down Dolph Ziggler, they decimate him with a crutch and, like, break his trachea. I remember at the time being like, oh my god, like, that's intense. Breaks his trachea, takes him out of action for 6 weeks. I guess WWE assumed this storyline was so hot that the only place that they can conclude it was at the hottest party of the summer, SummerSlam. And even then we didn't get a conclusion. Even then, like, it was a weird bullshit double count out thing where like Lana and Summer Rae both get involved and it's like, oh great, guess this is still going on, I guess. And what's worse is you'd think like, okay, maybe they'll conclude it on Raw or something like that, but no, there's no conclusion at all, because a month or so later, the real-life Rusev and Lana get engaged, because that's what people do when they're in love, I guess. And TMZ, the media vultures they are, decided to run this story up and down the media cycle to a point where you couldn't ignore the fact that these two real-life people were engaged to be married. And WWE didn't like that. So, they had Summer Rae read him the riot act on live TV, basically bury this dude in front of the entire world, and then, like, literally 2 weeks later, he goes down with a bicep injury, meaning what they should have done months ago, put him on the shelf to rehab his character, now finally is forced to happen. And when he returns to television, he's just another bad guy. They don't really bring him back as a monster. Instead, they bring him back as a secondary heel, playing the goon to Sheamus. And that's all he really was for the next few years in the WWE. Just a middle card bad guy who was just gooning all over the WWE roster. What do you mean that's not what that means? No, he was gooning. He was a goon. He was playing a goon for Sheamus. He was a goon for Alberto Del Rio. He was just like gooning everywhere. He was gooning in the ring, gooning backstage. He was like gooning in that tank. Why are you laughing at me? Eventually, he would align himself with Aiden English to form the team of Rusev Day, a team born out of one of my favorite things in the entire world. When a heel does something so over-the-top stupid that it suddenly becomes the greatest thing in the entire world. In this case, it was Rusev insisting that every single day was to celebrate him. It was Rusev Day. Arbor Day? No. That's Rusev Day. Easter? Incorrect. It's Rusev Day. Hanukkah? No. It's 8 crazy Rusev nights. Thank you very much. And initially, I wasn't even going to talk about Rusev Day during this video because it didn't really fit the whole Valentine's romance love triangle theme. Until I realized, oh, wait a minute, the reason Rusev Day broke up was because Aiden English insisted that he fucked Lana in a Milwaukee Holiday Inn. It's like everything involving these two had some weird love triangle bullshit going on. Like The Rock showed up one week and Rusev wasn't even part of it, catching mad strays in this fucking promo as Rusev is like, The Rock walks up to him and is like, what's up, man? Fuck your girl if you smell, and like just moved on. Anything involving these two had some weird love triangle shit going on. But at least the Dolph Ziggler storyline had Dog Ziggler. The Rock thing was at least kind of funny. The Aiden English thing had the Rusev Day build-up. There was always at least like a little redeeming quality to each of these storylines. Which is what makes me think that WWE truly tried to push themselves with one last Lana Rusev storyline. One with no redeeming qualities. One that left no one looking better at the end of it. And one that, in my opinion, ultimately killed the career of Rusev in the WWE. Enter Bobby Lashley. You know, the fun thing about doing research for these videos is the fact that every time I get to a point where I'm like, I remember how bad this was, it just gets fucking worse. Like, I just find something new, a new piece of bullshit to add onto the pile. And in the case of this storyline, it's the fact that Rusev's return to the company at this time, A, was with a mustache, but we're not going to talk about that, and B, was during an angle with Maria Kanellis and Mike Bennett, which, like, believe me, next Valentine's Day, we're talking about this one, where he was being pinned to be the father of Maria Kanellis' child, which means he returned to the company to be involved in some weird infidelity, cucking bullshit storyline, only to be inserted into his own weird, bizarre, cucking, infidelity bullshit storyline. They were like, it's not enough for the company to have one. We gotta have 2 of these things happening at the same fucking time. So a few weeks later, they interview Maria, and they're like, so, is it true? Is Rusev the father of your child? And she's like, no, I was just fucking with Mike Bennett or whatever. It was a weird storyline. Besides, Rusev doesn't have to worry about me. I've heard he has his own problems at home with Lana to worry about, which, like, I know wrestling fans, we're smart. We don't want to be, like, spoon-fed everything, right? But what the fuck do you mean by that? What do you mean by, like, other than the fact that he has a midlife crisis mustache, this has not been brought up at all. It's not something that we've even, like, had hinted at in the back of our heads, if I remember correctly. So, like, why the fuck are they suddenly having problems at home? Also, why do I care if they're having problems at home? I don't care if, like, Seth Rollins forgot to get yogurt and now Becky Lynch is upset. Like, I don't care what happens at home. I want to watch fucking wrestling. And speaking of Seth Rollins, he's in the main event that evening facing off against Rusev with his Universal Championship on the line. The world title, the biggest title on Raw, is on the line. And they are fighting and doing the whole wrestling thing that wrestlers do when suddenly Bobby Lashley's music hits. And then out comes Bobby Lashley because it's his music. And then Lana follows him. And then they proceed to just fully make out on the stage, and it's kind of gross, to be honest with you. And then Rusev's looking out, it's like, what the fuck's going on? And then the lights start shutting out, and Seth Rollins is like, what the fuck's going on? And then The Fiend shows up out of nowhere, and the show just ends, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So that all happens, and then the storyline begins. And I want you to imagine, like, every piece of stupid soap opera bullshit you could throw into a storyline. And that's it. That's all of it. Anything you could imagine fucking happened in this storyline. There was like fake pregnancy announcements. There were like divorce court proceedings. There were marriages. There wasn't any weird like I have a secret twin sister bullshit, but they brought in another attractive blonde and Liv Morgan, so close enough to be honest with you. And the most frustrating thing about it, firstly, outside of the fact that like even going back and looking shit up, I don't know if I can do like a full recap like I did with the other storylines, because it was just like every week more bullshit got piled on top of the previous amount of bullshit. And I'm like, I'm still eating the bullshit from 3 weeks ago and you're expecting just to fill up my plate. It's like the Grinch in that scene where they're all feeding him the pudding and it was just, instead of pudding, it was bullshit storyline. And the worst part of it all was that people ate it the fuck up. I mean, not like us, you know, like smarky wrestling fans, the cool ones, we hated it. But like mainstream media ate it the fuck up because they craved the drama. And that's all this storyline was. Even if it didn't make sense, it was just like juicy, greasy, nasty drama every single week. And WWE, because the YouTube videos were doing numbers and because mainstream media started talking about it, decided to give us fucking more of it. Which, as a wrestling fan, was frustrating because it reminded me that, oh wait, WWE is willing to do everything, including cuck out one of its best performers to gain mainstream acceptance while not giving a shit about what I think. So things have changed, luckily, at least a little bit since then, but fuck, that was a frustrating time to be a wrestling fan. And it's even weirder to look back at when you consider the very next thing Bobby Lashley did was start the Hurt Business, the thing that propelled him into being one of the top stars in the company. It was like the, you know, night's darkest just before the dawn for him. But unfortunately for Rusev, that night would only get darker because, you know, you'd think that at least this storyline would give Rusev the opportunity to step out of the shadows of his extremely hot and flexible wife and maybe into the path of becoming a future world champion. Maybe this could be what finally makes him that star the WWE Universe always knew he could be. Maybe this could finally be Rusev's day. Unfortunately, there happened to be this teensy tiny little global pandemic that came along and fucked everything right up for him. Because if there's one good thing I could say about the COVID-19 pandemic, it's that it took the Lana, Lashley, Rusev storyline out behind the shed, shot it in the head, and put it out of its misery when Rusev, alongside numerous other WWE talents, were released from their contracts at the beginning of the outbreak due to budget cuts, according to the WWE. You know, that time the company looked at its roster and said, hey, I know it's a real rough time for you guys, and it's going to be hard for you to find any type of professional wrestling work nowadays, but we gotta focus on that bottom line, baby. Man, fuck that company, huh? A few months later, Rusev would make his debut for All Elite Wrestling, now wrestling under a shortened version of his real name, Miro. He would team with Kip Sabian, go on to try to fight God, and become one of AEW's marquee players, with Lana going on to join him under her real name of CJ Perry in late 2023. And I'll be honest, I was a little bit nervous about seeing these two back on screen together, but at the end of the day, AEW is a company that studies wrestling's past. It learns from wrestling's history to make sure not to make the same mistakes in its future. I mean, surely they would have seen that any storylines involving drama around Rusev and Lana would just result in overly long, confusing storylines that end up not benefiting any of the participants involved at all. That they would have seen that it was much easier just to rely on their inherent chemistry to make them a team that could dominate an entire division. That sometimes in professional wrestling, you just need to let couples be couples and let the stories be told that way. Welcome back, everyone, to one more episode of But Do You Think That's What They Fucking Did? So there it is, a look back at the extremely frustrating history between Rusev and Lana, Miro and CJ Perry, whatever you want to call them. I mean, I know at the end of the day, a lot of people like to compare pro wrestling and soap operas, but for me, sometimes it goes too far, and these two are a prime example of that. I mean, at the end of the day, professional wrestling's kind of a weird beast because the performers and the characters they play are so inherently intertwined with one another. The relationship between real-life Miro and the character Rusev are a lot closer than that of, like, Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool. I mean, we could see Wade Wilson kissing his girlfriend or whatever in Deadpool and not think about Ryan Reynolds' real-life relationship with Blake Lively, but in the case of pro wrestling, it's a lot different than that. With the characters so tightly interlocked with reality, separating that reality from fiction is a lot more delicate of a dance. When I see Lana on stage making out with Bobby Lashley, it wasn't some huge bombshell being dropped. It was more of an awkward moment. It was more of a bizarre twisting of reality that didn't really set in for me, if that makes sense. It halted believability for me because at the end of the day, I know that Lana and Rusev are two individuals who love each other, and we're about to go backstage and be like, "Wow, good work tonight. Really good match against Seth Rollins. Kind of weird how much you kissed Bobby Lashley." I knew they were going to be talking, going home, moving on from that. Professional wrestling works best when it's very tightly woven with reality in most cases, and trying to pry that weave apart is a very delicate process that unfortunately can usually risk losing credibility or believability in what we see on screen. But what do you think? Did you enjoy the Lana Rusev stuff? Did you enjoy the soap opera aspect of professional wrestling? I mean, I know I've made it clear it wasn't exactly my cup of tea, but that is the beauty of pro wrestling. There are a million different stories for a million different people, including people that just like seeing a Bulgarian man getting cucked by Bobby Lashley, I guess. So let me know down in the comments below, and make sure to lock that subscribe button and the accolade and drop the bell with a matchka kick. This is fucking cheesy. You know what to do. Do the YouTube stuff, and just always remember, ladies and gentlemen, that when you're a fight boy, you're a fight boy for life.